My wife and her friend mocked me for not having a job. They said I was useless and worse than a loser. They didn't know I owned the company they work for until I taught them a bitter lesson. Hello. Thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Collins Darwin from Ontario, Canada. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's dive into the details of today's story. For 10 years, I lived in the shadows, letting the world believe I was nothing more than a failure. My name is Ethan Caldwell, but to my wife, Olivia, and her circle of elite friends, I was just the husband, a punching bag for their cruel jokes, a man they pitted and mocked. That night, as I sat on the edge of our sleek, gray sofa, sipping water while they laughed, I let them think they had me figured out. But tomorrow, everything would change. Olivia, with her cascading auburn hair and the diamond earrings I'd bought her, was in her element. She loved hosting, especially for her entourage, friends who wore couture to casual dinners just to outshine each other. Tonight, I was their entertainment. Ethan, darling, Olivia said, her voice honeyed but sharp, why don't you tell everyone about your latest job hunt? The room erupted in laughter before I could even respond. It wasn't the first time she'd done this, used me as the punchline. But tonight, she was relentless. Maybe the vintage wine had emboldened her. Her best friend, Claire, chimed in, her tone dripping with condescension. Honestly, Olivia, you're a saint. If my husband couldn't hold a job, I'd lose it. I mean, Ethan's not even trying, right? She gave me a look that could slice through steel, and I forced a weak smile. That's the thing about playing a role. You have to commit, even when it burns. Inside, I wanted to laugh in their faces. I wanted to tell Claire that her cushy position as head of marketing at Apex Dynamics, the company I built, was hanging by a thread, with her resignation letter already drafted. But I didn't. Not yet. Olivia leaned back, swirling her wine. Oh, Claire, don't be too hard on him. At least he's good in the kitchen. The man makes a mean risotto, and someone has to do the dishes around here. More laughter. Even the husbands joined in, their chuckles echoing off the vaulted ceilings of the house I paid for, a house they thought Olivia funded with her part-time nonprofit work. Funny how none of them noticed the cracks in her story. Did they think her charity gigs paid for this marble-floored mansion or the luxury SUVs parked outside? No, but they believed what they wanted to believe because it was easier. And I let them. Olivia wasn't done, though. Remember that time Ethan thought he could be a consultant? She said, laughing. Oh, darling, you spent months preparing for that interview, didn't you? What was the company again? Oh, right, Apex Dynamics. They didn't even call you back. She clutched her sides, as if it were the funniest thing she'd ever heard. That one stung. She didn't know it, but that interview was a quarterly undercover review to ensure my managers were doing their jobs. I sat across the table from my own hiring team, silently evaluating them while they judged me. And now, my own wife had turned it into a joke. The rest of the night passed in a blur of cruel remarks, shared glances, and clinking glasses. They didn't see the fire building behind my calm expression. That's the funny thing about people like them. They assume the quiet ones are weak. But weakness isn't silence. Weakness is thinking your throne is secure when it's built on lies. Eventually, Olivia waved me off to the kitchen. Be a dear and get us another bottle, won't you? I stood and did as she asked, my face a mask of quiet submission. But as I walked away, I caught the words she whispered to Claire. Honestly, I don't know how much longer I can do this. A man without ambition is just embarrassing. Embarrassing. That's what she called me. I felt the heat rising in my chest, but I swallowed it down. That night wasn't about reacting. It was about remembering. Every word they said, every laugh they shared, was fuel for what was to come. As I stood in the kitchen, uncorking another bottle of champagne I bought, I glanced at the clock. It was 9:47 p.m., less than 12 hours until the board meeting. Less than 12 hours until their world came crashing down. Let them laugh tonight, I thought. Because tomorrow, none of them would have anything to laugh about. The next morning began like any other, but for me, it was the day I'd been planning for years. The house was quiet as I dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, one of the few indulgences I kept hidden for moments like this. Olivia was still asleep, her careless confidence evident in the way she sprawled across the bed, oblivious to what was coming. For years, I'd let her believe she was in control. Today, I was taking it all back. At 6 a.m., I left the house, stepping into a black town car waiting outside. My driver, Marcus, nodded as I slid into the back seat. To Apex headquarters, I said simply. He pulled away, the hum of the engine steadying my nerves. My phone buzzed with a message from Nora, my most trusted executive and one of the few who knew the truth about me. Nora, boardroom ready. Security briefed. Documentation finalized. Me, perfect. Be sure the legal team is on standby. Nora, they've been briefed. Good luck. Luck wasn't a factor anymore. Everything had been meticulously planned. I leaned back, watching the city wake up around me. It was almost poetic, the world going about its business, unaware that in a few hours, 5 people's lives would be irreversibly changed. When I arrived at the office, I entered through the private service entrance, a perk of being the CEO of Apex Dynamics, though no one had ever seen me use it. Nora was waiting in the security office, handing me a visitor's badge with a faint smirk. James Rivera, it read, the fake name I used whenever I needed to go undercover within my own company. Everything is set, she said, motioning to the monitors displaying live feeds from the building. Your wife's friends are already here. Morning meetings are underway. I glanced at the screens, watching as Claire, Vanessa, Michael, and David arrived, laughing and chatting as if it were just another day. They had no idea what awaited them. Make sure security knows not to intervene unless instructed, I said. I don't want any disruptions. Nora nodded. Understood. What about Olivia? My stomach tightened at the thought of her. She wasn't part of the corporate takedown, not directly, but what I had planned for her was just as thorough. She'll know soon enough, I said, brushing off the thought. Focus on the task at hand. At 9 a.m., I made my way to the executive conference room. Through the partially open door, I could hear them laughing, their voices carrying the same smug tone I'd endured the night before. You should have seen her face during the interview, Claire was saying. She looked like she hadn't touched a computer in years. Vanessa laughed. No wonder HR keeps rejecting people. Where do these applicants even come from? My hand tightened on the doorknob, but I didn't hesitate. I stepped into the room, letting the door close behind me with a soft click. Their laughter died instantly as they turned to face me. I could see the confusion in their eyes, the flicker of recognition as they tried to place me. Actually, I said, my voice steady, I think it's time we had a real conversation. Claire blinked, her brow furrowing. Who are you? And what are you doing here? I smiled, taking a seat at the head of the table, the seat that had always been mine. I'm Ethan Caldwell, I said, CEO of Apex Dynamics. And as of this morning, your boss. The room fell silent, their faces a mix of shock, disbelief, and fear. I leaned back, letting the weight of my words sink in. Let's begin. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. Claire's confident smirk faltered first, giving way to panic. Vanessa looked like she'd seen a ghost, while Michael and David sat frozen, their bravado evaporating. I let the tension build, savoring the moment. They didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or beg for forgiveness. Claire recovered first, or tried to. Is this some kind of joke? She said, her voice trembling. You, the CEO? That's impossible. Impossible. I leaned forward, folding my hands on the table. Claire, you've worked here for 7 years, and you've never thought to question who signs your paychecks? Who approved your promotions, or overlooked your creative accounting practices? But let me assure you, it's not only possible, it's the truth. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. Instantly, the monitors on the walls flickered to life, displaying Apex Dynamics' original incorporation documents. There, in bold print, was my name, Ethan Caldwell, founder and CEO. Beneath it was my photo, a younger version of me, smiling confidently, the same man who now sat at the head of the table, watching their world crumble. I built this company from the ground up, I said, my voice steady but sharp. Long before any of you were here. Every policy, every division, every success you've taken credit for, it all started with me. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed, struggling to find words. But you're a nobody? I finished for her. A man who couldn't even land an entry-level position? That's what you all thought, isn't it? That I was just Olivia's failure of a husband, clinging to the scraps of her so-called success. Michael finally found his voice, though it was shaky. This has to be a mistake. There's no way you've been running things. We would have known. Would you? I raised an eyebrow, tapping my phone again. The monitors now displayed emails, financial reports, and surveillance footage, each file damning, a testament to their years of misconduct. You were too busy inflating sales figures, covering up harassment complaints, and funneling company money into your personal accounts to notice who was really in charge. I turned to David, usually the loudest of the group, now pale and silent. David, tell me, how's your golf game? Still playing on company time, using the Apex corporate card to cover your rounds? His jaw dropped, but no words came out. And Michael, I continued, those quarterly sales bonuses you've been bragging about at every dinner party? They're based on fraudulent reports. I have every fabricated number right here. I gestured to the monitors. Would you like me to show the board? Vanessa tried a different tactic. Look, Ethan, Mr. Caldwell, this has been a misunderstanding. I've always respected you. I mean the company. If there's anything we can do to fix this, I cut her off with a cold smile. Fix it, Vanessa. You've spent years burying complaints, silencing employees, and fostering a toxic culture. You didn't respect anything except your own comfort. Claire, ever the opportunist, leaned forward, her tone pleading. Ethan, we didn't know. If we'd known, we never would have mocked me. I said, my voice rising slightly. Laughed at me, treated me like dirt in my own house. I stood, planting my hands firmly on the table. Ignorance isn't an excuse. You didn't know because you didn't care to know. You thought I was beneath you. And now, you'll face the consequences. I tapped my phone one last time, and the screen behind me changed, displaying their termination letters, each signed and dated, effective immediately. You're all fired. Your access to company accounts and systems has been revoked. Security is waiting outside to escort you off the premises. No, Michael muttered, shaking his head. You can't do this. I locked eyes with him. I just did. Vanessa stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. This is outrageous. We'll sue. You'll what? I snapped, cutting her off. Sue me for firing you with cause? For exposing the fraud, the theft, the harassment you've swept under the rug? Be my guest, Vanessa. But I promise you, I have more evidence than you have excuses. The door opened, and 2 security guards stepped inside. Take them to HR for their exit interviews, I said, my tone icy. Make sure they understand the terms of their severance or lack thereof. One by one, they stood, their confidence shattered. Claire glared at me, as if her anger could undo everything. Vanessa looked like she was holding back tears. Michael and David shuffled out without a word, their heads hanging low. Just as they reached the door, I called out, oh, and one more thing. They turned to face me, hope flickering in their eyes. Don't bother reaching out to competitors. Your non-compete agreements are still in effect. And trust me, I'll be watching. The guards escorted them out, and the door closed behind them with a satisfying finality. For a moment, the room was silent. I let out a slow breath, the weight of years lifting off my shoulders. Nora entered moments later, her tablet in hand. Well, she said, her tone neutral but her eyes gleaming with satisfaction that went about as expected. Good, I replied, straightening my suit. Now, let's prepare for the board meeting. There's still work to do. As I walked out of the room, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in years. For the first time, I wasn't just the man behind the scenes. I was Ethan Caldwell, CEO of Apex Dynamics, and I had just reminded them all exactly who I was. When Olivia stormed into Apex Dynamics headquarters that afternoon, the receptionist didn't even have time to stop her. She marched past the front desk, her heels clicking angrily against the polished floors. I was waiting for her, seated calmly at my desk, reviewing the final files from the day's terminations. The door burst open, and there she was, my wife, looking every bit the picture of indignation, her perfectly styled hair and designer handbag swinging in her hand. Ethan, she said, her voice sharp and demanding. What in the world is going on? I just got a call from Claire, crying hysterically, telling me you fired her and half the executive team. Have you lost your mind? I didn't look up immediately. I took my time, finishing the last line of a report before closing the folder and setting it neatly on my desk. When I finally met her gaze, I spoke with deliberate calmness. Good afternoon, Olivia. What brings you here? What brings me here? She repeated, her voice rising. You fired Claire, Vanessa, Michael, and David. They're my friends. You had no right. No right? I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers. Olivia, I own the company. I have every right. Her sharp intake of breath was almost satisfying. What are you talking about? For 10 years, I've let you believe I was just some aimless, unemployed husband, I said, my voice steady. But the truth is, I built Apex Dynamics from the ground up. Every decision, every success, every dollar you've spent came from me. And now, I've finally taken out the trash. You lied to me, she whispered, her voice breaking. No, I said coldly. You lied to yourself. And now, you're about to see what happens when the truth finally comes out. I hung up, leaving her in stunned silence. There was more to say, much more. But that conversation could wait. For now, I had a company to run. The day after Olivia's departure, the atmosphere at Apex Dynamics was electric. The toxic fog that had lingered for years was gone, replaced by a sense of hope and renewal. Employees stopped to greet me, not with the stiff politeness reserved for their supposed CEO's husband, but with genuine smiles and nods of respect. For the first time, they were seeing me for who I truly was, the man who had built this company from nothing. Nora met me at my office, her ever-present tablet in hand. "We finalized the reorganization plans," she said, her voice steady but with a hint of excitement. "The departments affected by Claire, Vanessa, Michael, and David are already seeing improvements. Productivity is up 25% in some areas." "Good," I replied, taking the tablet and scanning the data. "What about the employees who left because of them? Any word?" "We've reached out to everyone who filed complaints or resigned due to harassment or discrimination," Nora said. 12 have accepted reinstatement offers. The others are considering it. "Make sure they know they'll be walking into a very different environment," I said. "I want them to feel safe here, valued." Nora nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Understood." That afternoon, I held an all-hands meeting in the main auditorium, a first for me. For years, I'd avoided the spotlight, preferring to work behind the scenes. But now, it was time to step forward and address the people who had kept Apex Dynamics running, even under the shadow of corruption. As I stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. Hundreds of faces turned toward me, their expressions a mix of curiosity and anticipation. I gripped the edges of the podium, taking a moment to steady myself before speaking. "Good afternoon," I began, my voice carrying easily through the microphone. "For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ethan Caldwell. I'm the founder and CEO of Apex Dynamics." A ripple of murmurs ran through the crowd, but I continued. "Over the past several years, I've stayed in the background, observing how this company has grown and changed. And while I've seen incredible talent and innovation, I've also seen things that deeply disappointed me. A culture of fear, favoritism, and dishonesty took root here, and I take responsibility for not addressing it sooner." The room was completely silent now, every pair of eyes fixed on me. "But that ends today," I said firmly. "The people responsible for that culture are gone. And moving forward, this company will be a place where everyone, regardless of their position, feels valued, respected, and empowered." I outlined our new initiatives, anonymous feedback channels, enhanced HR protocols, and mentorship programs for employees who wanted to grow within the company. I spoke about accountability and collaboration, about building a culture of trust and innovation. And when I finished, the room erupted into applause. For the first time in years, I felt proud, not just of what I had built, but of what it was becoming. 6 months later, the transformation was remarkable. Departments that had been bogged down by inefficiency and favoritism began to thrive. Sarah, a brilliant programmer who had left after being sidelined by Claire, returned to lead our new AI division. Under her leadership, we filed 5 patents in 6 months, more than the company had in the past 3 years. The Thompson account, one of our largest clients, doubled their contract with us, citing our new leadership and transparency initiatives as key factors. Other clients followed suit, and our revenue soared. But the most rewarding part wasn't the financial success. It was seeing the employees flourish. People who had once been afraid to speak up now shared ideas openly. Collaboration replaced competition, and for the first time, Apex Dynamics felt like the company I had always envisioned. As for Olivia and her friends, their downfall was swift and brutal. The evidence I had gathered against them was airtight, leaving no room for retaliation. Claire and Vanessa's reputations were in tatters, their misconduct exposed to every potential employer. Michael and David faced lawsuits for fraud and breach of contract, their careers effectively over. Olivia, meanwhile, had retreated into silence. She moved out of the house within a week of our confrontation, her pride too wounded to fight me in court. The divorce was finalized quickly, thanks to the ironclad prenuptial agreement. I later heard she was staying with her sister, trying to piece together a life that didn't revolve around appearances and materialism. For a while, I thought about her often, not with anger, but with a strange sense of relief. In the end, she had done me a favor. Her betrayal had forced me to confront the cracks in my life and take back control. And for that, I was grateful. 6 months after the shakeup, I stood in my office, looking out over the city. The skyline was painted in hues of gold and orange as the sun set, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Nora knocked lightly on the door before stepping in. "Final numbers are in," she said, handing me a report. "Profits are up 60%. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high, and the mentorship program has a waiting list." I smiled, setting the report down. "It's amazing what people can accomplish when you get rid of the dead weight." Nora chuckled softly. "There's one more thing," she said. The press is still asking for an interview. They want to know how you managed to pull off such a perfect transformation. I shook my head. Let the results speak for themselves. I'm not interested in publicity. She nodded, turning to leave, but paused at the door. Any regrets? She asked, her tone softer than usual. I thought about it for a moment. About Olivia's mockery, the betrayal of her friends, and the years I had spent hiding in the shadows. But then I thought about the company we had rebuilt, the people who were thriving, and the future that lay ahead. No, I said finally. No regrets. Just lessons. In the end, revenge wasn't about destroying what was broken. It was about rebuilding something better. And as I stood there, watching the city lights flicker on one by one, I knew that Apex Dynamics wasn't just a company anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, redemption, and the power of starting over. And I was ready for whatever came next. If this story inspired you, drop a comment. Have you ever been underestimated like Ethan? How did you prove them wrong? Hit that like button if you love the twist, share this video with someone who needs a boost, and subscribe for more epic stories of comeback and justice. See you soon in our next story.